Hi, welcome back to the video that discusses the Kubeflow implementation on EKS Anywhere on bare metal. Recall from the previous video, myself and Raj, we were actually discussing this particular implementation, and that's where we started with creating a bare bones EKS Anywhere cluster, followed by deploying the Kubeflow. And then in doing so, we ended up with deploying a sample notebook that has the minimal configuration to observe the GPUs, that are accessed by the notebook. Now, in doing so, towards the end of the video, towards the fag end, you would observe that we highlighted one specific caveat of where the SSL implementation to the Kubeflow UI can be restricted or can be a challenge if not configured properly, right? And that's where we ended up in doing a port forward and then accessing the UI through a port forward. Now, starting with this conversation, let's actually execute a proper way to deploy the SSL, over the Istio ingress gateway that gives you the access to the backend Kubeflow UI. Now, if we don't do this, we will always be challenged by doing a port forward, and unnecessarily that creates a complication. So allow me to share my screen. That's where we will start, the sequence. Now, the first things first, what we will have to do is by default, when you install Kubeflow, the Istio ingress gateway is of the type cluster IP. So we will actually patch this particular service with the type load balancer. Okay, so let's do that. I'm on the terminal, my EKS Anywhere admin machine, which has the access to my cluster. Okay, so now that the service is patched, if we say kubectl get service minus an Istio system, we should see that the Istio ingress gateway service has received the external IP address from the MetalLB pool, right? MetalLB that we defined in the previous video. And we created a 2 IP address pool. It has received its IP address .75. Okay. Now, once we have done that, we will just export a quick variable for that IP address, same .75 IP, so that we can use it in our configuration. So I'm just exporting that IP address as the variable ingress host. Okay. Once we do that, we will create a certificate. Now, the way that you would create certificate is best left to you. But here, what we are doing is we are using the cluster issuer to create a certificate, and you could use the IP address in this case or a DNS name, whichever ways you look at it. So here, what we are doing is we are using that .75 as the host IP address for the certificate. Okay, so let's create the certificate. I have already created the certificate. Okay, so in this case, it should say unchanged, right? So this certificate is already present on my cluster. Once we have created this certificate, we will go ahead and edit the ingress gateway object, okay, for the Kubeflow. So we can use this command to edit the Kubeflow gateway, named as Kubeflow-gateway. Let's do that. Sorry. Let me take this. Okay, you can see that the default, and this is what is restricting, right? So the default gateway configuration suggests that, it supports host of the wildcard type, but for the port HTTP only, actually, right? So what we will do is either we can do HTTP to HTTPS redirect, or in this case, just put a, the spec as for HTTPS, actually. Okay, so let's do that. what we will do is we will replace those lines with this line and also present the TLS configuration. Now, the TLS, you can always derive it from a secret if you have your own certificate that you're bringing in. But in this case, we just use the cluster issuer to create the certificate, right? So we can simply present this configuration, host wildcard port is 443, and this is the TLS configuration actually, okay? So let's save this particular. So now that we are done with this, what we can do is we can start accessing, instead of the port forward that we saw in the previous video. Yeah, we did this port forward and then we went ahead to access the Kubeflow UI through a localhost /8080. We will now directly access the .75 address of the Istio ingress, and that should actually give us the access to the UI as well of Kubeflow. So let's try doing that. Yes, 172.29.198.75. Okay, so this is a self-signed certificate. So let's go ahead and we come to the Kubeflow UI, right? I mean, this was also the case previously, but now we can actually try signing in with the default username and password. Like I said, you can always integrate this with SSO, but for now, in this exercise, we will just go ahead with the defaults actually, okay? So let's access this. And we were, even in the case of HTTP, we were able to reach to this point, right? The issue of CSRF came up when we were doing through HTTP, when we tried creating a new notebook, right? So let's try creating a new notebook here. And we will use these two sample lines that we did in the previous activity as well. Simple, way to actually take our information from the GPU. So we will use Jupyter Lab, let's say test 1. Let's take the CUDA image, give it, let's say 2, 8, 1 GPU. GPU vendor is NVIDIA. And yeah, that should be it. Okay. Now you can see that we did not end up in the same error that we had last time when we were trying to access the Kubeflow UI through the HTTP connection of the ingress IP, right? So I think we will conclude this video. I just wanted to make sure that, again, there are more nuances to this in terms of bringing your valid certificates, creating the secret with that, and then when you edit the, the ingress configuration, the gateway configuration, you'll have to supply that as a secret for the TLS, as opposed to how we did it. But this is just a quick way actually of showcasing that this can be done. Okay. Let's conclude this video, and then in the next set of videos, we will get on to something more interesting, specifically observing how do we train models, how do we actually use distributed training and things like that. So see you in the next video.